ahead and call our Urban Renewal Board meeting to order. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Board Member Maiden.
Present.
Board Member Smallwood.
Here.
Board Member Sheldon.
Oh, sick.
Okay.
Excuse.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
Board Member Exner.
Here.
Board Member Hokinson.
Here.
Board Member Schneider.
Excuse.
Please. Okay, and Board Member Jones.
Here.
And Board Chair Pillay.
Kind of here. All right. Thank you for that, Jeff. On our agenda for tonight for Urban Renewal Board is the approval of the minutes from the February 6th meeting, as well as our new business SURA funding plan and project planning. So let's go ahead and go to the approval of the minutes. Unless there's discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting for Urban Board.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. There's a move by Board Member Exner, second by Board Member. I'm only kind of here. Jones. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's the getting used to saying counselor names.
Yeah, right. I know. Opposed, nays, or a thumbs down. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, to new business. Jordan or Tyler, do you want to get us started?
All right, thank you, Chair and members of the board. You guys see the screen? Okay, great. So tonight, I think the purpose, what we want to do with the board here in our hour, 54 minutes, is to kick off goal setting, and a couple things to do here. First, it's been a while since we've met as a board on regular board business. We're heading into the budget, so similar to the city budget. The renewal budget is a 2-year budget cycle, and I think we've done a couple things with this council in the last couple of years in terms of an Urban Renewal 101 and having a consultant come and explain a little bit about how TIF works and how urban renewal plans work in Oregon. And so what we're trying to do is continue to advance the work to do some more strategic planning for the district, put together project planning that is aligned with what our projections are for our TIF and what our debt capacity is, and then work with you all in setting what our project priorities are for the district. I've said this before, but the urban renewal plan is for Sandy is actually pretty broad and flexible. Unlike some other cities that will have a very specific plan or multiple specific plans in their plan, we actually have pretty broad categories that kind of lets us dream, but also think about the best use of using tax increment to make measurable difference in our commercial areas in town. So one of the things that we thought would be helpful is kind of walk through some funding scenarios to really get a better understanding for the board and staff on what it looks like in terms of available resources over the next several years. Ideally, we want to start with the next biennium, but we also are projecting out multiple years for purposes of funding big projects, other projects that the board may want to prioritize, and knowing that we can't do it all at once, but having a more clear picture of what we might be able to afford in the next 2, 4, 6, 10 years, I think will be helpful. And I think the hardest part of this work, honestly, is identifying specific projects. And back to that, the great thing about our plan is it's flexible, but the difficult thing about our plan is after you've gone through your priority projects, which we've done since the urban renewal district's been in place for a number of years now, we're now at the point of, okay, what's next? What are these projects that we really want to pursue, given that we have 30 to 40 million left in the district? So just a reminder, we've seen this map before. This one now has a nice little red line showing the new road that's being constructed right now, Bell and 362nd. So you can see those big commercial properties that are within the district, which does play into some of the funding projections, because if that area does develop, that will be some massive tax increment, given what the properties are valued at today versus what they could be valued at upon development.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you expand on the significance of why you marked the Bell Road in red? Or is it just oriented?
I think that's our GIS technician adding that onto an existing map. And we just want to show, orient to, but also show that the district hasn't grown since I think the last amendment in 2018, but one of the last areas for a lot of tax increment, besides redevelopment of existing parcels is the development of those 100 acres or so there.
But everything in blue is the district.
Is the urban renewal. Yep. And so you see, on Bell Street, those properties that are not blue, north and south of Bell are R2.
So to kind of orient me though, is Mount Hood Athletic Club in it?
Mount Hood Athletic Club would be, this is Kate Schmitz here, and
Yeah. looks like it.
this parcel,
But the
right,
properties behind it
are not, right? That's R2.
And the Sandy Community Campus is not.
It is.
It
It
is,
is.
that big blue spot
I
right there,
apologize, I'm just trying to, right here.
Yeah, big
Okay,
blue kind of
okay,
T by itself.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Huh, cool.
And it better be, because that's our biggest active
Yeah.
project.
Well, it's just,
But it
I
looks,
got misoriented. There's this
Yeah.
big white
but just
deal.
to the mayor's point,
Yeah.
it does look to me that the elementary school, that building is inside the urban renewal district.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, that's this
Just
property
want to
here.
make sure that I'm looking at right.
We often get the question about Mining Park. It is not. That's this parcel here, but City Hall is. That's City Hall. Okay, so I mentioned the broad, kind of flexible nature of the plan. The plan activities, public improvements, which I think you guys know what those are: streets, undergrounding of utilities, civic improvements like this Centennial Plaza, preservation, rehabilitation, development, and redevelopment. I think those kind of speak for themselves, what that entails. That could be, redevelopment of existing buildings through grants and other, financial incentives. Property acquisition, disposition, we've done this one before as well, because that's how we acquired the Cedar Ridge property, but that can include other acquisitions
Within the district.
within the district. Yep, within the district. Everything I'm speaking about is within the district. And then design plans, Sandy style kind of came out of an urban sort of design, downtown design guidelines that were developed using urban renewal. We've recently met about the 362nd and Bell Street concept planning, and then plan administration. That's just staff, personnel, costs, small studies, financial studies, things like that we do to administer the district.
When you say administration though,
Mhm.
so like we're able to pay a portion of Tyler's salary for
Mhm.
administering it. And David Snyder's for some of the work he does with the facade improvement
Right.
program and others.
Yeah.
Those are really the only two employees at this point, or
Me,
we have some
Tyler,
planning stuff too.
It's 10% of Jordan and I, like 45% of David Snyder, and then a small portion of Kelly O'Neill, and then a couple of his planners, and a very, very small portion of their salary paid out of it as well.
and here's just some examples of some of the projects that qualify under those plan activities. I've seen these before, working on these. I mentioned some of these examples already. Also, don't need to talk a lot about the completed projects. I think this is not an exhaustive list. There's been a lot of projects completed over the last several decades. Things like the downtown entrance triangles. The board funded the covered structures program. We've constructed that parking lot off of Pioneer. Of course, the grant programs and Cedar Ridge purchase are the big ones. I think the biggest or the first big project we did was the underground utilities on Proctor.
Proctor? What you said?
Yeah. Okay, so next, so getting into the meat of things now, and this is jumping into our funding projections, and this is some of the things that we wanted to cover is remind the board about the maximum indebtedness and the relationship between the indebtedness and the fire district, the assumptions that we included in these projections, which we'll look for your concurrence on, and then a couple different scenarios that of course can be modified and played with, but kind of based on those assumptions and our tax collections and TIF projections. So the assumptions that we kind of worked into these funding scenarios, first of all, that the current projects that we're working on, we'll be working on those, and those we carried forward into the next biennium. We got the community campus park improvements. The council will be holding a work session here after this meeting on some concepts for those park improvements. There's $3 million still for that project. That was a part of the $10 million bond that was sold in 2016, 17. And the Cedar Ridge site preparation costs are also assumed to be budgeted in the funding projections in the budget. We estimate that at about 1.5 million. So that's part of the assumptions. And then on this one, this is probably a topic for kind of goal setting and going into the budget too, is the level of continuous funding that the board would want to see us put into the budget for our grant programs. And so what we put in here for an assumption is $200,000 per year. So that'd be $400,000 per biennium for our facade grants, for tenant improvement grants, daycare, childcare grants, and other incentive programs.
So what's with that assumption? Is that based on previous years what we've generally spent?
Yeah, about that. I mean, this biennium is kind of skewed because of covered structures, obviously, and it has ebbed and flowed. We got a lot of activity in facade grants over the years, initially, especially with Sandy Style and everything. There's still interest out there, but this is probably 4 or 5 grants a year type of level.
Yeah, so is David kind of, and I assume he is, but are we keeping track of what businesses have utilized the grants versus what businesses we project will need funding for various things?
Yeah.
Because that would help with like trying to figure out how much money we're going to be using annually, is if we know, hey, business X, Y, and Z have not participated in this grant yet, and we'll probably need these improvements. So
yeah, there is a certain amount of forecasting that goes on, and there is a list, that we keep, kind of informally of what grant possibilities are. Some of it comes down to timing with the property owner, business owner being ready. There's also like, one of the things that we probably want to talk about the board at some point is restructuring how we do grants. This came up a couple of years ago about, the grant committee that we used to have. Now we take, a lot of the grants directly to the board for approval, right? But, just in terms of how we oversee those grants too, there's probably some improvements that we can make in streamlining them. And also, it's kind of a come in as you go. And then once we exhaust the funds, we'll wait for the next biennium. And so earmarking for future businesses can be difficult because, we may be like, have a list of 3 or 4 businesses or buildings that would be great to get a grant, but we might have 2 or 3 come in.
Right.
And so we don't want to promise and then not be able to.
So on that topic, how much are we targeting certain properties that we would like to see participate in the program versus sitting back and waiting for them to approach us?
I kind of feel like when it started, there was more of target outreach, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. But I think at this point, there's probably sort of a come to us more.
Yeah, and then that could be a strategic thing, and I'll go to you, but I feel like we should talk about as a board, right? Because I have some on the top of my head, but like one would be the what it's called, where Weimar and all that is, right? So like that is a property that is hugely visible in our community on our main street. That is
not derelict,
but could use some investment and be updated to a Sandy Style that would really present our community in a different way. Yeah, just an example. Yeah, Carl.
Well, there are some owners who are resistant, would be the word I'll use, to this thing because of past approaches that we've made to several of the businesses. And it's really down to the point now where if they wanted to, we would have got them in at this point. So it's a matter of how we approach them and what kinds of things we're talking about to push them towards a Sandy Style and such. So I know a couple of business owners that will probably never get in. So I don't know where that will end. And I don't think you can lead that horse to the trough and stuff his head in it without exceeding some issues.
Carl's in our marketing department.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember what the line was the other day.
No. I would just add, maybe it's also a tour.
But the pitbull,
It's also a tool for business recruitment. You know, it's something that David brings up when he's on the phone with prospective, business owners.
So
Please.
I wanted to piggyback on what you're saying. I mean, you're asking the question, is there a list? And I'm like, well, I want to be involved in making that. list. So-
Sure.
So I like the idea of us as a board coming up with some priorities in that very specific as opposed to these higher level.
And
Like that.
go ahead, Carl. and I'll
Because
ask-
I know in the past, we have talked rather aggressively about establishing some sort of a budget on this thing, rather than nickel and diming the remainder of the fund. I guess I would really want to talk about what else is in the offering of this thing. So we don't end up leaving something behind and finding out that we don't have enough money or don't have enough time by staff or whatever that might be. I think there's a lot of importance to looking at what that should look like. Certainly the facade program has been very successful and really highly visible, but there are other things that we should be doing too.
Sure, I don't disagree with that. I guess what I'm wondering then, if we have business owners who are resistant, and I understand, but could we attach some sort of incentive where, hey, when this building vacates and you want to put a new business in here, you're gonna have to do a facade improvement.
Yeah.
And because, it's not really fair that some businesses have had to and have taken initiative to do that, and we allow other businesses to not participate.
At least one or two of the resistant owners is about spending public dollars on private. So there's not the,
That's what it's there
At the
for.
same time, though, this program was always supposed to have an element of a carrot and a stick.
Yeah.
That where, again, remember, urban renewal is for blight. Where it was, your buildings becoming blightful.
Right.
If that's the word.
Needing
But-
some updates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
needing some
Little
updates,
lipsticks.
a little lipstick.
And we're going for a look.
And here's this program that we have to assist in that.
And we're doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it will help them in the long run.
Exactly.
And part of it goes back to our conversation we had at goal setting about code enforcement. Quite honestly.
I would
Please,
come-
yeah.
So before you get started in all the complex financials, which I only understand about half of that stuff until I really get into it and have a chance to, but here's what I was kind of struggling with as I went through the packet this morning. Is that, all of a sudden I'm like reading about kind of refunding our existing debt and borrowing more and all that. And I'm like, wait a minute, what, do we have any projects? Do we have any interested developers, at our door? And so it was really hard for me to kind of start looking at all these funding options first thing before I've even, gotten information about possible large scale projects, because honestly, where I come from is we have spent 20 to 23 million, depending on, I don't know if the pool's in there or not, on SURA funds. We've spent $5 or $6 million on the fire station, fire stuff appropriately. We've spent $11 million with roads funds for the Bell 362nd. So we've basically spent, $40 million so far. And I'm looking at what do we have to show for it, $40 million worth, and I'm a little bit underwhelmed. But I understand, a lot to be proud of. But going forward, when we're talking about another 60 million, I really want to see some big ticket, things, and really some real successes that help build our tax base and meet public need and all that. And that aren't so speculative, and to that, like building up Pleasant Street roads and all, when we have no assumption that anybody's going to come and, build along them, is kind of a speculative thing to do. And, purchasing the school property without knowing how much the cost to build everything, what we wanted, a bit speculative, and here we are. And so that's I'm just going to tell you that that's how I was feeling when I reviewed stuff. And so when you start talking about these funding strategies and stuff, if you could kind of help flesh out those thoughts, with, kind of
Yeah,
help
and-
explain where you're
Totally.
going with
Yeah,
it.
And if I may, some of those projects you talked about, and and not to backpedal on a lot of previous decisions and stuff, but we've spent a lot of our urban renewal fund on public properties that do not improve the tax revenue
Mhm.
into our
Mhm.
community, right? And so I don't love the idea of being speculative, but to that point, you got to invest in areas that I think will have more potential to actually bring in a better tax base. The Sandy Community Campus, well, we were always wanting to do public stuff on there, right? And so that nothing we're doing there has a great benefit to the culture and vibrancy and stuff for our community, yes. But it's going to do absolutely nothing, to Kathleen's point, of tax wise, just pure dollars. And I
Well,
would
it
argue,
does kind of help stimulate that area for growth,
yeah,
more so than
that's a
probably
good
road
point.
improvements.
yeah, okay.
But a lot of
Yeah.
buildings have done that. In fact, there was a time when the joke on the street was that as soon as the facade program got completed, the last nail was put in there, the assessor was sitting there doing the redo of the tax assessment. So I do think the city has
Oh, yeah. There has-
has been profited by the fact that we have increased the value, and we wouldn't have another, like, $40 million worth of ability to fund new projects if we hadn't put the additional tax liability on the existing properties.
So it sounds like we're all just very excited to hear you explain.
Yes.
One question.
Okay.
Get it
So
done.
Kathleen mentioned 40 million in spend, but I don't see that.
Yeah, we'll get,
Are you gonna
yeah,
clarify what we
yeah.
actually spent?
yeah.
Okay.
We'll get to that. This is kind of the conversation that we probably need another 7 hours for on a weekend, actually, honestly.
Just
Is
finished
that
up.
correct? Is that correct?
We gotta recover.
Um, Yes, so I think there is probably a work session that needs to happen around grants. So I'll just leave it that way. One of the reasons we put this in here is I think we have enough in the pipeline and interest for $200,000 per year. This is also a placeholder because while we can project and we can develop lists for what facades we want to see improved, this could also be the funding mechanism for incentives for trying to attract some of the businesses that you guys want to have in our district, breweries, hotels, et cetera. And so we have kind of a set aside as incentives catch-all to kind of help those businesses and attract them. That would be, kind of a good feedback, to have through a goal setting process too. Okay, so explaining a little bit about the maximum. So we have about 39 million remaining. And that includes the 2.8 or roughly
In the
3 million.
district.
In the district, for the life of the district,
Yes.
the maximum indebtedness, less all the projects that have been completed. So 23.5 million, and then 5.3 million for the fire district. We have. So why we get into the funding projections and bonding and everything is to set sort of a foundational knowledge for the board to understand how much money do you actually have to play with? How big can you dream? Because we want to manage your expectations. We can't go out and do $39 million project tomorrow, right? That is over the life of the next 20 years that you'll be able to do that.
Right.
And some of that's dependent on interest rates, when you sell the bonds, refunding comes into place because we have existing bonds that you can refund to kind of expand the life of that existing debt, but also bring down the interest rates and there's issuance costs and all that. So that's it's kind of a chicken and egg, but it's also like, let's give you the parameters of how much money you have to really, dream about in the next budget cycle, but also in the next 10 years, honestly. Because again, the way that urban renewal projects are funded is we issue debt, and the tax increment that's coming in from property taxes in that district, those blue properties on that map, fund the debt service to pay those bonds. So we can get, $3 million worth of debt, basically, the principal and interest. And then we need $3 million in property tax revenue to pay for that debt on an annual basis, right? And once you pay off a bond, that gives you, now we got $3 million to go issue more debt to pay that debt.
But the interest rates, we'd be better off refinancing some of the existing debt we have with it's lower interest rates because
Probably not as much today as
Not
a year
now.
ago.
The existing debt we have is very favorable.
Yeah.
However, the annual debt service payments are quite a lot. So if we were trying to capitalize on how much we'll actually go and borrow right now,
Oh, so we can
refinancing the
we can get a low
existing.
payment at a high rate.
Well, we did a 15-year borrowing instead of a
We should
20-year.
talk
I got a
about
credit
that.
card offer like that.
Yeah, 25% interest.
Okay, thanks.
We get airline miles or not?
No, no,
All right.
No trips to to Florida.
And then also just going back to my question, I think you said we're at 30.5 million total spend today out of the fund. 22.5 plus the.
Yeah, right here on this slide, 23.5 plus the 5.3. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
like 20. Well, but plus the 11 million we spent from the roads thing.
But that's not part of it.
I know, but I was just trying to.
That
doesn't count.
I know, but when we're talking about throwing more money that way is what my point was.
Okay.
I don't,
I'm more
I have my numbers.
For property is going to give us an opportunity to make a lot more money in taxes.
Somebody there.
Just think about the gas.
The
The whole strategy.
Along a highway.
The other thing to point out on here too is that 1.4 million, that's 10% of the total maximum indebtedness of the district. That's what's remaining for the fire district to spend from their renewal maximum indebtedness. So
Are there spending restrictions the same as the rest of it? So is it basically a new facility within the district? Or
it
can
could
you
be
go buy a fire-
equipment,
So
facilities.
you can go buy a new fire engine.
I mean, you see some of those expenditures, 2004 and 5, and so that's probably equipment, small equipment. And then the big expenditures with the new fire station, the remodeled fire station. Chief's not here, unfortunately. I think there's been talk about probably having to get more apparatus equipment, like a ladder truck, little fire truck here in the district, especially at 4-story buildings.
Is that gonna belong to Clackamas though?
Those are the
If you wait till the
questions
end of the meeting, if it ever gets there, I've got a report about some of that. And I know that Lori has a lot of background to that too.
But this 1.4 has to last him that 25-year, right?
Well, there's no kind of protocols in place of when and how that relationship works. I assume it's at the board level. You guys debated among this. What's a priority? The district comes, says, we need a new fire truck. Is that the priority for the board for that given biennium? That's kind of up to the negotiations. I think that happens at this level and at the budget committee level.
I should have thought about that.
The board should have reflected on what our relationship with them would look like post this agreement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so a couple different funding scenarios, and really this is, again, like a sort of our starting point. We felt like one option would be, what's the most we can get the soonest that we can get it, right? Like how much can we get if you had this huge project in mind, right? And again, we don't have one yet. That's this big. And this funding could be stretched out, after you issue a bond to complete a number of different projects, right? But under kind of the assumptions we talked about, current interest rates, and some other financial issues like this revenue sharing thing that I don't really want to get into, except to say that we've been so successful in Sandy with our tax increment growth that we've hit up against a 10% cap that we now have to share the success of that district with the overlapping taxing districts, which is a good and a bad thing, right? Because the city gets some of that money, the fire district does.
Does that include Clackamas County too? We're giving some of that, very small amount,
Yeah,
right? But it's
small,
still,
yeah.
yeah, we should.
Yeah.
think
School
about
district,
that.
well, it goes into the,
Clackamas County Library District, Soil and Water
That's okay.
Conservation District, Mountain Community College, Fire District, Port of Portland, Vector Control, and then
What?
School District and
Yeah, see, there's
ESD
some numbers in
are on
there.
a per pupil basis and not directly impacted, but they're listed in our report. So
Okay.
it's a long list.
Okay.
Most of those are pretty small percentages though, right? I think fire, the school and the city are the big guys.
Fire and city are the big hitters. Yeah.
so based on all those assumptions and everything else I mentioned, we can go out and issue about, I think, 23 million, which would include 17.5 million for new projects, right? So a portion of that would be refunding the existing debt, and then we would have 17.5 million about. And again, this could change in a month or two, but that give you kind of the round number, 17.5 million for new projects starting fiscal year 26 and 27.
It took me a bit to
Yeah.
get my head wrapped around the word refund, but it's a refinance, right?
Refinance,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. And then you have 3 million that would be available for any other projects in 23, 25, and that's on top of the 4.5 million for the community campus park improvements and site work at the Cedar Ridge property. So 7.5 million total of capital, which is a pretty good amount. And that also assumes the fire district would spend their 1.4 million in the next 4 years. So if that assumption changes, if that gets pushed out, that's another, $1.5 million that we could spend earlier rather than waiting for, later years, and maybe some of that 17.5 million or something goes towards. the
We're
fire district.
contractually obligated with the fire district.
Is it an IGA or is it just a?
It's I think there was a resolution, there's a formal letter signed by previous Mayor Malone in December of '98 that outlined the agreement and discussion that was had between the fire district and the city council at that time. In short, saying 10% of the district.
Is there any documentation and minutes and stuff that show that it was actually voted and ratified by the council?
I have a memory that it was, but
Okay.
you have to
I'm
look
just-
into it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that. I also haven't looked for it.
Right,
I would
okay.
assume that it was, given that spending happened pretty regularly in those first decade of the
Yeah,
It was
district.
also more of a Wild West time too.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't remember how formal, but
Yeah.
there's some stuff in there.
super curious about what some of that was spent on having,
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah.
moving on.
So this is how it looks when you put it in a spreadsheet. So this is, just start crossing your eyes a little bit. This is our the current biennium is 21-23. So this is what our current projections are for how we're going to end this current fiscal year of biennium. And then how much, so the beginning balance is how much is rolling forward. That's basically the capital that, our working capital spend on the community campus park improvements and site demo work. And then, how we have, over 4 million rolling over into 25-27 that's available as well, right? So that's shows you how much just we've built up in the district in tax increment that can be spent on projects over the years, which, shows that we've had some success, but also by 25-27, we have a lot of capacity then, with property tax over the biennium of 4 million to go out and issue debt. And issue those $23 million in bonds to get that 17.5 million in capital. And again, that could be projects that are spread out in future biennium, right? If you don't have, $17.5 million project that biennium. But this is, again, how much money can you get as soon as you want to get it? The thing to know about this funding scenario, too, is that if you do a big issue and you get a lot of cash in 25-27, you're not going to have the capacity to go out and issue another bond until closer to 2040, right? Because your debt coverage, is going to be so high, it's going to eat most of your TIF, most of your property tax revenue, right? Until bonds start falling off.
Dumb question here. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, so going back to your first thing, we spent $23.5 million, but we've also been paying down principal and interest all these years, right?
Mhm.
And so even with all that, we still owe 23 million, or I'm confused.
So the 23 million would be a new financing. That'd be a new bond we would sell.
But
To
have,
get-
of this,
She's referring to.
of the original
former.
table you had for the 23 point, the maximum indebtedness, and we have, urban renewal,
Mhm.
it says we spent $23.5 million, but we've also been paying back finance and or interest and principal.
Mhm.
So is
Yeah,
that
the
after
interest, the
payments?
interest isn't reflected in that maximum indebtedness, right? That's just the capital.
Okay,
the
but
actual
we have been making
capital
capital
cost.
principal payments on that.
Yes.
And so even after all that, we still are 23 million in the hole. I mean, that we've spent.
Where are we on paying that back? Is the essential question.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't have, I can get you the amount that we have remaining. But
The important thing to remember with urban renewal financing is that principal and interest payments are not calculated into the maximum indebtedness. The maximum indebtedness is just on personnel, AKA administration, materials and services, AKA grants, capital, AKA new construction or improvements in properties. So while yes, we may have spent, I'm making up a number here, $30 million because we've been paying principal and interest payments, only 23.5 of that is actually allocated towards our maximum indebtedness.
But still though, so the 23 new million, that's a new bond.
Mhm.
But we don't have the number to answer Kathleen's question as to how much has been paid back to that original 20 million.
I guess you can ask the question differently. How much do you have to refinance it when you, at this?
Oh,
Yeah, how
in
much
that,
debt
I'm
is
sorry, in that
outstanding?
number, it's about, I think it was 4.3 million.
Oh.
There you go.
Which isn't much.
What
That's
was the-
what's left.
What's
About
4.3?
4.3 million is what would
What
be
we have to refinance.
refinanced in that 23
So
million.
that's what's
Oh.
left not paid off. in the
Oh,
25.
okay.
That's the remaining debt.
It took us a bit.
Okay,
We got-
well, because all of a
we got
sudden,
us
all of a
there.
sudden the table was showing that,
I was
another
like, let's make
23
this-
million or something.
So just super quick question. So when we agree to fund a project and that money is given to local business, do we account that they actually did the project that we gave them the money for? Or is it just, we just wash our hands and walk away?
No, we definitely do.
Okay.
The grant program is, David's heavily involved with, kind of the bidding and contracts and all that, and, inspections, and, I mean, you saw the work that went into the covered structures. So there's a lot of verification on that. What we'd possibly be looking at is actually streamlining that a little bit more, where it could be more of your, obviously verify when they spend it and have some practices in place, but less of the hand holding on actually managing the projects.
Mhm.
And bids and stuff
Sure,
like that.
sure.
So just a procedural question here.
Yeah.
The reason for going through these funding scenarios, rather than talking about specific projects, is just to orient us to possibilities. So we start thinking about goals, or do you actually, in our minute, 20 minutes, want to get goals?
Well, you can see why it wasn't titled goals on the slides. I want to start the conversation. I think there's going to be another session we're going to need for actual goal setting of projects, because I knew in an hour we weren't going to be able to sit here and brainstorm projects. I think it was important for the
Background.
district to understand how much capital we're actually going to have next biennium to then pursue projects, right? So if we want to skip ahead, we can get to the projects and say, okay, Pleasant Street's 10.7 million. You could chop that into phases. Can we afford to actually do it in the next biennium? Is kind of the question you need to ask as an example, right? And you may have other projects in mind about acquiring a certain property that is going to be probably $1 million to $2 million.
Mhm.
Do we have the money? Well, I wanted to answer that question for you guys first before you start coming up with projects.
There's a complexity in this too, in that some of these things we have given grants for 90% of the project, sometimes 50%, sometimes less than that, even if I recall. So sometimes that money gets stretched more than others. So there's some, that kind of thing still to think about too.
Yeah, and again, back to talking about grant programming, it's I think capped at $41,000 for the facade grants, which it's been the same for many years. I might be talking like, is that enough now to really incentivize?
With the
businesses?
cost of things.
So,
Yeah. No, I
um,
would rather kind of stay on track with what you're doing personally.
I would love to see a number. This is what we got in 23, 25, 24, and what's in 25, what's in 26, and so on. Just,
I think the
I
issue
got
is
4
we
years
get to
left.
make-
so-
we get to make up that.
Yeah.
number,
Yeah.
And it has ramifications.
But to some degree, it's based on what's left over, what we have to
I think that's what
refund.
they've shown us the three parameters.
Right.
The most, the littlest, somewhere in between. And then we get to kind of.
But these always lead you to the middle.
I think
There isn't really a
See here.
And then another scenario was answer the question of like, okay, given the current assumptions on interest rates and everything else, how much could we get if we went out and issued a bond as fast as we could go, right? And how much cash do we have to spend on a project for the next fiscal year, right? And so then, looking at that and the assumptions, current interest rates is we can go issue 7 million in new debt and have 9 million for new capital projects. And again, that'd be on top of the 4.5 that is already budgeted. So that's 9 million for projects in 23 through 25. And it's still assuming the fire district spending in the next 4 years. But again, we won't be able to issue any new debt until 31, when the current bond is paid off.
We're not gonna be around anymore.
And so this is
I
how
don't know
that
about
looks
you.
like.
I've survived several things. I intend to be around for a while.
So in this graph, you can see or this table, you see the difference there is 7 million coming in next biennium. $13.5 million worth of capital that we're able to spend in that. That's the 9 million plus the 4.5 million, and then the 1.4 million in the 25-27 biennium is that fire district spending. The other scenario that that we didn't put together, but it's probably a question you may have, as long as we don't issue any debt. We just have tax increment excess coming in and spend as you come in. Obviously you can have at least 3 million there, if not more, on the next biennium. And probably what is the difference in the debt service? 2 million, was it? So about 2 million in projects per year that you could give. The challenge there is that you don't get a bunch of cash to do a huge project, but $2 million worth of projects every year for the next decade is a good amount.
We could change course at any time too.
Right. So status quo.
So what's the turnaround
No,
time on
that-
changing
because
course?
Didn't we talk about that in the budget meeting? At any point in time, we come change our complete mind and say, no, we're
Yeah.
upping it.
Like there's some big opportunity that we're not even foreseeing right now.
Mhm.
Well,
And
because you never know what's coming around the corner.
right, but yeah. So, okay,
Provides a lot of flexibility.
yeah, we don't need my opinion yet. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So those scenarios, the bottom line of those scenarios, like I said, 3 billion available for new projects despite any debt issuance either in the next biennium or the biennium after that. And it maintains funding for the existing grant programs, $200,000 per year. Some of this I've already touched on as we kind of gone through the presentation. We've debated some of these things already, but everything's subject to change. This is kind of based on our best knowledge right now about interest rates and where our tax increment financing is. The revenue sharing cap. One of the other thing to kind of introduce too is depending on the goal setting and what the projects you may have in mind is some, the capabilities of staff in delivering projects. Especially major projects, and projects are more complex, significant capital, development agreements. If we go through sort of the acquisition, disposition, redevelopment type activities, what is sort of that threshold in terms of goals and projects where you start talking about actually having an urban renewal staff member, which I think I've been thinking about this for about 4 years, actually, as I've looked at how well funded and big our urban renewal district is. And once we've kind of crossed over into, we got some big significant projects to manage, would be time to start really thinking about bringing on sort of a project manager, director level position for the urban renewal department. So I want to introduce that as we have that thinking.
Yeah.
Setting. Okay, wow. We had more time. So we did actually, if you recall, this summer we did do a survey on projects in the plan to try to, fill out on where priorities may be for the board. This is now dated 6 months or so. So there's things that have changed, obviously, in that time. So take that into account. Here's the survey results based on those surveys and property acquisition disposition.
How many City Hall staff members did you turn out for this?
None. This is 7 of 9 board members that responded.
Yeah.
7 of 9 board members responded. Thank you. So
Does the disposition refer to the Cedar Ridge
Number one,
buildings?
no way.
I think this refers to any project that any projects of acquiring property.
I think that's why I voted for it, because I kind
Yeah.
of figured that.
I
Yeah.
think it was vague enough that it
Yeah.
could be anything.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. when I
Yeah,
was
those
reading
first
it.
2 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So facade grants obviously are still popular. So all these others were ranked the same. City Hall, 362nd Avenue Extension, again, we're a project that we're active working on. Street projects, public open spaces, pedestrian bike transit, then public parking facilities were up there too. But it kind of reflects honestly what the priorities of the board and the things that we've been working on, so far.
No particular order here, right?
No, this is an order of, this is ranked.
It is ranked.
Yeah.
So
So it was a
traffic's
rank
first.
of 1 to
But
5.
I
or
didn't,
5.
I
Go
didn't
to the
complete the
next slide.
survey.
Go to the next slide.
Me and Lori did not complete the survey. so.
We could do a new survey, by the way.
Yeah, I think-
It is
Especially as
old.
we do a
Oh, I see
draft
what it
list,
is.
we could do a prioritization.
Yeah.
Some assumptions have changed.
We need a button.
That's what
You need a button.
Please,
I
Don.
do need a button.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, sorry.
So I hate surveys. I don't like, especially trying to interpret what the top is when you have a survey group of 7, of which 5 responded. So I don't think that's useful. I have pushed and maintain at this point that we really do need a bigger discussion, not at this level, but pull up to the purpose of the plan, what do we want to accomplish? So much of the early plan has already been met. It feels like a great opportunity to re-envision that second half of, of its lifespan of the plan. It's so that we don't nickel and dime another or million in the two here or there, it to nothing. And not that we wouldn't have anything to show for it, but let's be,
Too much biggest bang for your buck.
yeah, and deliberate. That's something
Absolutely.
that's not just the biennium focus, but long term. I mean, I saw a presentation on this thing called the Old Barn District.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. If that's the vision we're talking about, great. If it's Pleasant Street, great,
Mhm.
So let's have it.
let's have it. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it. Let's
Yeah.
come up with it. I mean, put our sacred cows to the side, my pool and everybody else's thing. Let's talk about sacred cows.
We have secret cows.
That said, in defense of what this has accomplished, and I don't hear anything that's, saying anything negative about it, but so we call the facade. So often when we talk about nickel and diamond, we think of little facade program here, a little facade there. And I just want to say, man, it's really
Oh,
transformed our
abs-
downtown.
Absolutely,
you know.
absolutely.
But I know what you're talking about. It's the little this, the little
Yeah,
that.
totally. And I'm
Yeah.
with you there.
Yep.
I'm with
Yep.
you there.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I do
Yeah.
think, that facade piece is very important.
Hopefully, we're all in the same boat on that.
Yeah, please, Kathleen.
I would just add one thing, I was involved pretty closely with the TIP district up in Government Camp. And they put in some money to prime the pump and get it going, $500,000 to trail connections that we built all around the town and all that. But by and large, what they spent the $9 million on is they had developers, building the store, the condos, and they gave them money to, hook up to the sewer line or to pay for their fire sprinklers in the buildings, anything that was county required.
Mhm.
That's, but they had developers there and projects to fund. And so that's kind of where I thought we were going to be going with this. And that's why when we talk about all these projects, but we don't have any developers or anybody on the hook, I'm just getting nervous about spending millions of dollars on a,
But if we can have a discussion on that, I mean, if we were to have that goal session and say, we want to build out this, integrate it with our economic development, who now give them a charge. This is what we want to find, go find somebody interested in doing this. To me, that's what an economic development.
And that's
thing
about
should be
being
doing.
proactive with your growth instead of being.
Yeah.
reactive.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect for kind of what we're looking for, why this is a struggle, is because I think that visioning of where do we go from here has sort of been lacking. And honestly, staff, we can help guide that. But that comes from the board too, and we need to facilitate those conversations of we've accomplished so much. How, we hear you. We want to continue some of these successful programs that have transformed the downtown and keep it maintained, honestly, looking the way it does, street trees and all that. But yeah, what's the bigger picture for where we go?
But to your point, though, this is something that we should almost go back to the fire annex and sit around and not in any time real soon, but so often our urban renewal planning has been thrown at the tail end of our council planning or in an hour work session.
It's a big deal.
And we really need, and I'm not saying, guys, let's all go back next week, right? But it took us long enough just to get a February date for the last one. We should think about really dedicating some time as an urban renewal board agency and it should go all day, but like a morning, or something like that, that really.
It sort of needs a charrette, right?
Yeah.
Between all, to sit down with a map and properties and images, doing a tour, right? And identifying, okay, what could we do here? What could we do here? What, are the opportunities here and how would we make that happen?
This thing has its own life.
I think we need to be big picture too, but it's good to know there's several projects in my head that I would love to see, but I think going back to the purpose of the SURA board and trying to figure out what it is we're trying to do and what can we do, because there are many things we can just not do. The operations side of the world and so on, so.
First of all, I
think it's
just want to say
important.
that I really like it, sitting over here all by myself. I like it. I got lots of room. But, um, sorry, Chris. I'm curious, do you hear anything through the chamber, through the businesses of like, out, is there any talk of not necessarily that, the chamber talks about projects, but
Oh, but we
do you
do.
hear,
We
do
get-
you hear things?
We, oh
And-
yeah, we hear lots. Oh yeah, oh yeah. You
Yeah.
know, there's some businesses that like the facade grant program, there's others that don't, when I think when we're trying to get them to do it, if it's 40-50%, that's a lot to ask the other. I know from working with different people around that it's, well, $100, it's only $100 to our businesses. Oh, it's only another $200 to our businesses. But some of those businesses, $100 is going to make or break them.
Sure.
And whether we think that's how they should be running their business, reality is that's how it is sometimes. So some of these facade grant programs are great for some of our bigger, but our littler ones even can't afford the 50%. So I take that into consideration. The biggest thing I hear is parking. I know we say we have X amount of parking. We've got the parking back behind Two Brothers and the
Yeah.
Thai place there. Have you driven by it during the day? I would
Most
love to
everybody's
every
using it to
day
go
go
up the
by.
mountain.
And I can tell you, there's
Yeah.
only 2 or 3 cars that are, when I've been by there, that are in there. They don't use it. It's back behind.
Yeah.
Nobody's carrying a 40-pound bag of dog food from Dolly's clear down there.
True.
So I know one of our priorities with our businesses is they want to see more parking. I mean, that's really, so yeah, there is a lot of things that do come up and we've seen and
I don't disagree. My only thing is, I didn't even know that parking was there until the other day.
What?
So I think we need to do a better job of also identifying where our parking is too. Like,
I guess maybe because I look across the street at
I
it.
mean.
well,
I'm
there
just-
is, there's a lot, I agree. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who don't know it's there, but the ones that know it's there is like, I'm not walking three,
it's a
4
hill.
blocks.
It's
a hill.
I'm not
It's a hill.
walking,
It's a
yeah, it's a
hill.
It's a
hill.
pretty good hill.
And
One of the
crossing, there's no
steep hills in
crosswalk
town.
there to cross,
But who's-
it's not
The
easy to get
skiers are
across.
parking there, is that what you're saying?
No,
There's-
it's
there's
supposed-
nobody
it's
parking
public
there.
parking.
I think the
Oh.
code for brothers
But
there's.
It actually does fill up pretty good though. My understanding is from me learning about it for the first time is on the weekends.
And I would bet on the
That's
weekends,
yeah.
absolutely, but during the week, when we've got all of our businesses
Right.
running and
Sure.
going, yeah. I
The
mean,
one that really works full is the one behind, I don't know, you want to call it the restaurant there next to the Ace Hardware Store,
Yeah,
that kind of.
yeah.
parking.
that
That
parking
is
lot is
always
a
full.
nightmare.
It's
And
There
always
is
they
no
are
parking
using
after
it for
10
parking
o'clock.
lot.
And it's always full.
We've got our business recovery center office in there and I'm in there daily.
That's bad.
And there is days where you park blocks away.
Yep.
Because everybody's using that there. Yeah, it's.
So when we go to just sit down and do goal sessions, I would like to hear more.
Yeah.
As far as like, the businesses that, hey, this grant works great for, here are the businesses that this grant doesn't work good for, and here's why. Because those are things that we can look at, either improving or changing or things like that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I want to think about that new part because not saying that it's not important to take a look at our existing businesses in the old part of downtown, but that whole Bell Street's opening up a new
Mhm.
part of Sandy
Mhm.
that with the right investment could become defining for what Sandy is.
And I can see a lot more businesses wanting to go in there
Yes.
than on Pleasant Street because a lot of the businesses that are looking for spaces right now they want to be where they're visible.
Sure.
They're not feeling like over, back behind somewhere that they're visible. So
Doesn't
that
that an
space
interesting
there.
discussion, that Pleasant Street versus Old Bond, where should we be putting our time and effort? I think that's a
Absolutely.
conversation.
Sounds
Well,
much
there's
like
down
Old
there
Mill.
at Bull Run, the commercial stuff in Bull Run is also visible.
I love the
Right.
apartments. Just
So-
keep that.
I saw somebody, I thought it was brilliant.
That reminds me of Bend. What do
Sounds
we
like
call
Old
that?
Mill. Old Mill
Mill.
District.
Look at the
Yeah.
old barn.
Barn district, just let it grow.
I
Let it
think
grow.
so. I
All
think
right.
so.
Okay, you guys want to do some project goal setting? 2
No.
minutes? No.
Well, You're
Yes.
6 o'clock already.
So
Very
here's
boring.
just real
Not
quick,
today.
active projects, mentioned these already. This is what you'll see, and what we've repeated. I did want to point out, we do have some outstanding incentives for the building next door. I think the board's aware of this, so we've been in conversation with them. They do have plans to do some TI work there and some streetscape improvements.
For which
once
building?
again,
This is the old,
Our
Studebaker
building,
building.
the Studebaker building.
Oh.
Yeah.
You said next door and I'm like,
Sorry.
it's okay.
I thought-
Yeah,
It's
not
okay.
over here.
That's why I asked.
And this, again, this is just, brainstorming. This is the type of thing that we need to do. But, once we do the high level, then we can start doing more of the nitty gritty, right? On actual projects, given like now that kind of, okay, what can we actually afford to do? What's our target if we're going to do projects?
I will, in defense of the TI program, though, as we can go into that next meeting, is with a lot of the older buildings we have in town, when you think of ADA requirements and updating these buildings to current state building codes, there's a lot of investment that needs to go into these buildings before they get occupied a lot of the times. In that TI program, I've just seen it in several occasions where it is the difference between getting somebody in that building versus it remaining vacant.
So again, these are just ideas kind of thrown up there, and some of them, we don't even have a cost for because we don't know the full scope of what they might be. For example, we could do a per cost for starting parking stall to figure that out. And then under preservation, rehabilitation, development, redevelopment, this is where you can kind of get into the ideas of dreaming big about, okay, maybe on Pleasant Street becomes a parking structure if we do kind of a development agreement that we buy into and get a private developer to put in something there that accomplishes a goal for the city, like a hotel or space for nonprofits or incubator space or something like that. Kind of working through something a little more sophisticated that has some money tied to it, property development, and gets a win for what we want.
So in my mind, I'd love to see nods from council if you agree. I would like staff to spend a little bit of time investigating an enterprise zone at the properties down there.
362?
The old barn
362nd
district?
go. At the
362nd?
old barn district. And with the spin of is I believe that we were successful in adding hospitality to the enterprise zone at the other side of the road. That's just some of the legwork I think we can do to try to make some of those properties a little bit more attractive to businesses going in there.
I need to understand more what that means, but I don't know. So,
Yeah, I don't,
Okay. Well, then it sounds like
yeah,
let's
me.
meet and inform council about enterprise zones and all
Okay.
that.
Right.
and for purposes of the budget, I don't think it matters
Right.
what comes forward to the proposal when we go into the budget cycle.
Right.
Because we'll change it when we get a great idea.
Yeah, and I think that what we would do is just, and we'll probably have one more session, but going into the budget would be, I think the assumption is that we're not going to be issuing bonds unless the board makes a change, right? And then we can make that budget adjustment, do a supplemental budget, right? But, there is big projects take time to ramp up, right? I still that now, planning, design, engineering and stuff. So even if we were going to go issue $10 million or $9 million, like the ability to actually go spend that on a big project or development agreement or something like that will take time anyway. So now you have that knowledge that we have $3 million to spend in the next biennium over the top of what we already are planning to do. So,
Great.
yeah. So more conversations to be had. Thank you. I think this is helpful. We need to do this more often.
Well, let's work to get something on the schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Thumbs up for that.
Great. Exciting. So anyways, the discussion questions, and we'll pick that up another day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, well, why don't we break for about 3 to 5 minutes and come back for our next one session.